Okay, good morning, everyone. Welcome. We appreciate the opportunity to have a special public meeting. The purpose of this meeting is to discuss a coordinated response to the revelation of a new funding formula that will be coming down from the Kansas Department of Corrections and its impact on Sedgwick County, our Department of Corrections, and our citizens. So that's the topic of discussion today. So I want to get right to work. Let's officially call this meeting to order for Thursday, September 25th, 2025. Madam Clerk, first item, please.
Roll call. Commissioner Blubaugh.
Here.
Commissioner Wise.
Present.
Commissioner Howell.
Present.
Commissioner Meitzner.
Present.
Chairman Beatty.
Present. Next item.
New business. Item A, Community Corrections Formula Discussion.
Okay, Manager Stoltz or Rusty Leeds?
We'll turn it over to Rusty.
Okay, Rusty, welcome.
Good morning, Chairman, Commissioners. Rusty Leeds, Assistant County Manager. So this morning, the agenda item is to review a letter that we probably are going to send to the state regarding this funding formula. As a matter of background, I want to just run through this real quick, kind of a timeline, just for everybody's understanding. On December 13th, 2024, Community Corrections Directors, while in a directors meeting with the Deputy Secretary of KDOC, were made aware of a KDOC adult funding formula that had been formulated and developed with an expected implementation date of July 1, 2025. Community Corrections Directors did not receive the new formula tables until January 6th of 2025 by email from a Community Corrections Advisory Council member. So that was the first time that they saw what the tables looked like and what the numbers were. They were not informed in December what their allocations would be, but that was the first time they saw that was in January. On January 7th, after having reviewed that and had conversations with staff here, Steve Stonehouse, the director of Sedgwick County Community Corrections, formulated a letter and sent to Secretary Zamuda regarding the concerns that we had with the formula as it had been presented on January 6th. A second iteration of that formula, after directors had an opportunity to share some concerns with the Deputy Secretary, on February 21st, a second iteration of the formula was sent to the directors. This time there were some minor modifications, but the impacts were basically the same. The numbers really didn't change at all. On February 26th, in response to that letter, our director, Steve Stonehouse, again sent a letter, this time to the Deputy Secretary, again sharing concerns about the manner in which this formula was developed, some of the concerns with the content of the formula, and obviously the impacts of the formula on Sedgwick County, but also on some other jurisdictions. At a director's meeting with the Deputy Secretary on March 6th of 2025, there was more conversation between her and the directors, essentially with no answers and no decisions made at that meeting, but there was conversation about it. During the June 2026 director's meeting with the Deputy Secretary, she indicated that KDOC was waiting on some additional data from OJA and from the State Sentencing Commission, and that the formula was basically on hold while they were waiting to receive this data that they were requesting, I think in part based on concerns and objections from directors across the state who were not comfortable with the formula. And then during that time, we allowed our director, Steve Stonehouse, to continue to work with the Department of Corrections, with his peers across the state, trying to come to a reasonable solution, something workable that would allow the Department of Corrections to make the changes they believed were necessary to have a structured formula in place, because historically they had a allocation mechanism. It really wasn't compliant with statutes that drove the way the formula should be developed, and they really couldn't articulate how and why monies were being distributed the way they were. So they wanted a formula, and they went through this process. So after the June meeting, again, I don't think there was a lot of progress. I don't think Steve got a lot of information, but those conversations had been had, and KDOC understood the concerns. On September 8th, 2025, the directors, again, by email, received tables and an email from the deputy director stating that the final formula was in front of them on that email, was attached, and that this formula was the final and would be implemented July 1st, 2026. Again, this table represented essentially the numbers that existed on the first table back in January 6th of 2025. There have been some minor modifications and some minor adjustments, but the bottom line was Sedgwick County was slated to lose almost 39% of their funding over the next 3 years, which amounts to almost $2.1 million. And other jurisdictions that had been slated to lose money were continuing to do so, and those that had been slated to see increases were continuing to do so. So there was not really any significant change in the formula. So that is kind of a 9-month history of how this thing has rolled out to the point that while Steve was continuing to work with peers and with KDOC, our lobbyist in Topeka was aware of this and was working behind the scenes. Also, commissioners were generally aware of what was going on, but we were hoping for a resolution, and we came to September 8th when KDOC declared that they were finished and that this was it. So with that, there was a letter following a robust conversation on Tuesday during staff meeting about this issue. A letter was drafted at the direction of the commission. This letter is before you, and you have seen it. The highlights of this letter addressing the governor, the Speaker of the House, the Senate President, the Kansas legislature as a whole, and the Secretary of the Department of Corrections, points out the disproportionate impacts to Sedgwick County. Again, an overall 38% decrease in funding over the next 3 years, which amounts to almost $2.1 million. Specifically, 51.7% decrease in the mental health pool of money that is within that bigger pool. We'll lose 51.7% of our behavioral health funding over that same time period. Overall funding is declining from $5.4 million in 26 to $3.39 million in 29. It also points out service reductions, which over the 3 years will result in 20 positions being eliminated from our Department of Corrections department here. It addresses equity issues. It addresses the lack of transparency that we believe existed through this process and the way that it was managed and handled. It also addresses damaging the behavioral health services of this community based on the cuts. And then it also gives what we request as far as intervention and corrections to engage an independent Kansas Research University, some legislative oversight of the formula development based on statutes, phased adjustment caps to ensure that no jurisdiction receives cuts that are debilitating in any given year or even over a period of a few years, that there's time and effort made to not defund in a way that is harmful to communities. And then finally, the transparency and accountability that would be expected through a process like this where communities stand to be significantly affected and the service delivery to clients who presumptively should be in prison but are being managed in the community in order not only to keep them out of state penitentiaries to save all of us and the state dollars on those penitentiary beds, but also to help these people change their behaviors and become productive members who can function without whatever traumas brought them to that point in their life, have some of those resolved where they can function, work, and raise families. So with that, the letter is before you. If you have questions, I will try to answer them. Mr. Stonehouse is in the house also, along with a number of staff members.
Yes.
So with that, I'll turn it to you, and if you choose, approve the letter and allow and authorize all members of the board to sign.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Rusty, for that recap. I think it's necessary. Before the purpose of the meeting today is to approve a letter. Before we get to the approval of the letter and the discussion of the letter, I think there's some pertinent questions that I want to make sure the public is aware of, and we want some clarity on. That'll help us shape specific language. So, Rusty or Steve, I had sent you an email this morning. And Steve, I'm just seeing your response on some of that. So a couple questions. I want the community to understand impact. We're looking at 38%, 39% reduced funding. So we on 1,100 individuals are being supervised in community corrections here in Sedgwick County. Roughly 300 to 350 are from out of Sedgwick County. They're not Sedgwick County residents, but they are sent here for your management under your corrections. Do we have any, if we receive a 39% reduction, Can we tell the state that we also, in turn, need to reduce the numbers that we're seeing, both from those, the 1,100 average that we see, but also those that are coming from out of county to Sedgwick County that you're supervising?
Right now, I don't believe we can, in so much that when we complete an annual comprehensive report for KDOC, we accept the responsibility to supervise all cases that are sentenced by the local district court and those that are sent here through the interstate, the courtesy transfer,
Yes.
not statute, standards that KDOC develops. So we're bounded.
So the reduced funding that we'll be receiving does not mean we'll have a reduced workload or reduced population that you'll be serving.
Correct. We don't manage the front door or the back door to the system.
Can you tell me a little bit about the type of individuals and these felony offenders that you're supervising? Are these low-level crimes? Are these violent crimes? Are these sex crimes? Are these?
So community corrections has been developed to supervise folks who otherwise could be in prison. So everybody is a felon of some sort. So that could be a low-range forgery felon all the way to sex crimes, aggravated robberies, aggravated burglaries, aggravated assaults, gun crimes, things like that, and everything in the middle. How we supervise them is through the intensity that they get is through their risk to reoffend. So every offender gets an assessment, and then the higher the risk, the more services, supervision, and attention from us that they get. So somebody who is high risk takes much more time, and they need much more services. Lori talked a little bit about the behavioral health program that we already have. So those are for oftentimes high-risk folks with significant substance abuse and significant mental health challenges. We know from years of doing this, when we tell anybody, go make an appointment and get your substance abuse evaluation done, it's hard. It's another place to get to. We provide that all in-house. You don't have to go anywhere. You can get services with us. You fund a drug court, which is all community corrections clients. These are folks who are not, I don't want to minimize any drug use, but these are not marijuana users. These are opioid users, fentanyl, methamphetamine, hard drugs that you subsidize a program to keep them out of prison and improve our community. So everything, as we start chopping away, I cannot expect folks to continue the level of service that we have, because we won't. The first levels of cuts are a few people, but the majority of it is services, just because we can't cut and grow at the same time.
Well, let me ask the question that I think is on all of our minds. If we get 40% cut, you're serving the same amount, you're forced to serve the same number of the population. Many of these individuals are violent criminals, felony offenders. They're not in prison, so we're supervising them in our community. If you receive this level of funding cut, is there a reasonable expectation that these individuals, because of the lack of supervision and oversight that you will not be able to provide, that these individuals will be reoffending at a higher rate, that will have higher crime in this community? Is that a reasonable expectation that we should be interpreting, that if we're receiving this cut, this is going to mean the level of supervision and oversight that you have to this population is going to decrease, and we can expect more reoffenses?
Yes, it will not be a direct cause, but it'll be those steps that folks start going down towards reoffending. Not paying it, or using drugs again, associating with people they're not supposed to, breaking their curfew. As that happens, they're putting themselves in risky situations that lead to offenses. They'll not have the supervision. Supervision alone does nothing but catch them, but they need the services paired with the supervision.
Right, and that's where the programming will be diminished.
Yes.
This cut decimates the capacity of our community and your department to do these services.
Yes.
Okay. All right, let's talk this letter, or if there's any other questions for Steve or Rusty. Any thoughts to the letter that was put together late yesterday? Thank you to staff and legal and that really put a lot of work into this late into the evening. So any questions on this or anything that we're missing, or Commissioner Reicher?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, everybody, for the draft of this letter. There's a couple of things, and I apologize, I did not, I should have worked on this last night and sent some stuff out, but there's a couple of things that I would think it's noteworthy if the commission would want to consider this. This 38 or 39% reduction, I'm looking at this letter through the lens of somebody because this is kind of new information. Even talking to Sheriff Easter, this is all kind of new stuff. So, looking at this letter in the lens of somebody that's not familiar, I would think that in that second paragraph, we'll lose over $2 million. After that should say something. We don't say anywhere where it's a 38% decrease. We need to say it's a 38 or 9% decrease, in my opinion. That's more impactful than the $2 million statement. Maybe in that same paragraph, as we've talked already this morning, we talk about we serve 1,100 clients, of which over 300 of them are from out of county. We don't say that anywhere in the. It looks like the first paragraph's good. The second paragraph is a little more of a maybe. And then I also I only have a couple more things. I think
Commissioner, that last one, say that one more time. The last one that you suggested.
Out of the 1,100.
Okay.
We serve 1,100. What do we call them? Clients, Steve? Clients, offenders. Maybe offenders is a better word. And more than 300 are from out of county on any day. This isn't like you don't have 1,100. You don't have 20 of them are duplicate. These are all brand new. These are all individual people. So there's a same with I think Sheriff Easter manages 1,200 a day in jail currently. So we have 1,200 people in Sedgwick County Jail that are serving sentences. And we don't have to put that in there. But in perspective, 1,100 are in the community getting services. And then I think it's worth somewhere that we say the committee is 31 districts that were participating. There are 31, whatever we call it, districts. Sedgwick County is the largest. And that we also, in that, at the end of your first paragraph, 8 million annually with 14.4 million taxpayer funds, we should say somewhere that we are the largest contributor of matching funds or whatever the words are in the state of the 31 jurisdictions. So my minor change is maybe in the third paragraph and later on in the fourth paragraph where it says the metrics like district size. I think before, Steve, you had mentioned it's district, the geographic size. Maybe the word geographic might be a little better description of add geographic into the district size. It's said again in the next paragraph, including district size, geographic. I've said kind of a lot, but there's, again, I want somebody reading this to see the impact of 38% decrease, 1,100 detainees. We're the largest contributor of matching funds, blah, blah, blah. So I don't.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I think that's the sentiment that we want to be conveyed. Yeah, any other thoughts?
Chairman, do we want to go as far as maybe highlighting some things on this spreadsheet to, you see some of the biggest benefactors and you see who some of the biggest losers are here and you see, the per client, per offender allocation, it's the smallest in Sedgwick County, 3,300. You look at some of the smaller $10,000, $11,000 per person. And to Commissioner Meitzner's point, I don't think that if that offender is from another county, it doesn't take away from their budget and add to ours.
Yeah.
I think if we have on there maybe even check marks that show who is able to be on that committee and highlight that for them so they don't need to look that up, but maybe put a check mark next to committee members and you can clearly see that those increases are on those same lines.
Again, I think we're just trying to make sure that fresh look from somebody that doesn't know what we're talking about. It's important.
Commissioner Howell?
Additionally, I think Commissioner Meister's recommendations are all excellent, and I really like the letter draft, but I think those are good improvements. But I would just say, one more I would add to that is the advisory committee members that were participating in this, highlight those rows with an asterisk, and put an asterisk at the bottom to clarify, these are the members that drove the change in formula. Because the bottom paragraph on page 1, carrying over to the top of the page on page 2, clarifies the point that this is really a biased and perhaps they have conflict of interest results, if you will, because they stand to benefit in what they did.
I think what you're saying, Commissioner Howell, and I kind of thought the same when I was reading through it. You're just wanting to, we're saying conflict of interest, maybe go just a sentence deeper and point to the exact conflict of interest we're discussing.
Well, yeah, the point of it is, I think they were motivated by gain. The formula is biased in their favor. And it's obvious when you look at those 6 rows that this is part of it's concerning to see that's what the consequence was, that they did something to benefit themselves.
Yeah, agreed. Okay, Rusty, do you think you have enough, Tom, enough to kind of just shape? I mean, these are just some added emphasis that we're trying to look to make sure it's exasperated in this letter. Okay, yeah. Any other thoughts on the letter piece of it?
One more thought. I like that we're suggesting solutions. So on the second page, 1, 2, 3, 4. Steve, you mentioned something that I thought was engaging maybe the universities or an independent group, and we say that in number 1. That really, would that be with the most important of the? Do we want to highlight that kind of, or do we want to we request to intervene and correct this inequity? Do we want to below or suggested solutions or something? Bring in a problem and suggest a solution. It doesn't quite say that. It says ask to intervene.
I would just
That's maybe.
I would just point out that I think that a statement was made to the directors at one point that if a third party was engaged, that it would basically come from the funding that goes to them to pay for that third party, which probably wouldn't be that terribly expensive, but the money to do that study would come from the pool of money that goes to the community corrections departments for their personnel and services.
I'd almost I'd rather pay directly for that study than take this paragraph.
Okay, Justin, what do you need? We're obviously going to make some edits here. How do you want us to proceed in regards to?
What I think you could do, Chairman, if the board would be comfortable with it, or the motion maker would be, I think you could have a motion to approve the letter with the changes that have been requested by commissioners this morning. I think you could delegate to county staff to put those into a letter. I haven't heard a lot of disagreement amongst the 5 of you to put those into a letter and authorize all commissioners to sign that letter.
Okay.
But I defer to the motion maker, and let me know if you have questions.
Okay, great. Go ahead, Commissioner.
Just, I think that's, I really like what we've done with the letter. I am curious about these other documents, these flyers. How do we plan on using these 2 flyers? What's the intent of these?
The intent of those is for public information and education.
Okay, would you take some feedback on one of them?
Sure.
The one that's got essentially the chart that's been reformatted to be like this. I'll just say this, the losses don't stand out because the net gain column, the bolded numbers on the like the dark blue and the light, the difference in shading colors there, it doesn't pop like the other one does. If you use red and green or red for the losses or something, I'm not so sure that the darker section in the middle is helping me read this. Actually, maybe makes it a little harder to interpret from a distance. And I would just say that the sheet we have on the letter is very easy to interpret. It's the same data here, but it's not as easy to understand simply because of the formatting. Okay. I would just like to make this a little bit more like the other sheet if I could. And I think that it's graphically pleasing, but I think we lose some interpretation because it's not as easy to see what it's trying to tell you.
I'll get with our marketing and branding folks.
Okay. Make a note that
Is this document printed right from the DOC?
no, it's something we created.
That's our
Right.
creation.
Oh, it is, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that,
Justin?
I
Yeah,
agree with
thank you, Chairman. Justin Wagner, County Councilor again. I was going to say, if there's an intent to enclose these other two documents that were handed out this morning with the letter, I think that could be part of the motion as well, because I think I believe that might be the intent. I looked at Tom and Rusty, the intent was to include the other two documents enclosed with the letter.
They were intended for public use and to give more context than what a letter.
Agreed. Yeah. A couple notes. One, I want to thank all of the corrections staff and leadership that is here today and the work that they do in this community. We see it, we value it, and we're going to continue to fight for the work that you do and the outcomes that you have for our community. So I want to publicly thank you. Second, Sheriff Easter is here today. He's going to be, and I'm certain District Attorney Mark Bennett's going to be heavily involved in this process as well. So I want to thank you in advance, Sheriff, for your input. And if you have anything you'd love to add, you're welcome to do so. But I'm certain you're going to have an opinion that you'll share. So, Sheriff?
Well, good morning, Commissioners. I didn't know about this till this morning. So after reading this letter, Community Corrections does tremendous work in this community with already limited resources. And so reading this, I find it atrocious, to be honest with you. Johnson County does not have the crime rates we have here. They're the richest community in the state of Kansas. They only have about 1,080 beds, and at any given time, they're between 600 and 800 inmates. But yet they ship their parolees to Wichita, Kansas. I have found that atrocious for years. For about the last 5 years, between the Wichita Police Department and us, we have told legislators that the practice of sending parolees to Wichita when we have our own issues and these parolees are committing more crimes in our community is not something that we appreciate, and it needs to stop. Well, now they're going to cut this funding and still ship us inmates from Wyandotte, Shawnee, Johnson County. I don't know how anybody thinks that this is a good idea. Secondly, which is not something that's being talked about, but I talked to the Wichita Police Department yesterday on a whole separate issue, kids that have committed crimes that are being sent to our community. Wichita Police Department is tracking that. There's 425 kids in this community that are not our kids. But yet, we're supposed to pay for all these kids with no help from the state? I am 100% in agreement with Steve, his folks, on it's going to cut services, it's going to drive our crime rates up, and we already see that with what the Wichita Police Department tracks of these out-of-county folks that come here and are re-offending while here. And so I think it's imperative that the commissioners and the county itself do exactly what you're doing here and highlighting those particular issues. I'll be more than happy to sit down with anybody to talk about statistical information and stuff that we see. Because this is, again, in my opinion, absolutely atrocious. And then finding out that the folks that put this together are all getting more money?
Yeah.
How is that fair and equitable? Because it's not. It's not transparent. It's none of those things that we strive to be in this county.
Right. Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
To your point, Sheriff, it's notable that while we're losing more than $2 million, Johnson County stands to gain nearly $1 million on the very same proposal.
Correct.
What you said is true, but look at the shift in dollars from Central County to Johnson County.
Who has less crime rate
Yeah.
than we have here, is a richer community, but yet still ship some of their folks here.
Well, Sheriff, thank you for that input. We're going to, collectively, we'll be working on this together, and your input and your feedback and your advocacy is going to be really key in this process. So we appreciate you.
Thank you for having me.
I'd also publicly just want to thank, I've had a significant number of state legislators reach out over the last 24 hours once this has become a little bit more public, and many of these individuals were not aware of what's happening in the funding formula is they're not in session right now. So I want to publicly thank several members of the state legislature that have reached out via email, call, text, and have basically pledged support that what's happening here, as the sheriff said, is atrocious and it's illogical and it makes no sense. So we're going to continue to fight and continue to advocate for what's best for the people of this community and the departments that do the work that they do here. So, okay, with that being said, I will move to approve the letter, including all recommended edits, including the attachments that addresses the community corrections formula, and I'll authorize all commissioners to sign.
Second.
We have a motion. We have a second. Madam Clerk, can you call the roll?
Commissioner Blubow?
Aye.
Commissioner Wise?
Aye.
Commissioner Howell?
Aye.
Commissioner Meitzner?
Aye.
Chairman Beatty?
Aye. Okay. Thank you again for the work on this letter, and we'll get this thing sent off to all the respective parties. Tom, anything else we need to cover today?
We do, Chairman. One quick thing, since we have you all together and we're in public meeting. We've had some issues in the last couple of weeks with credit card payments at county facility. And Lindsay is here to talk about that, and Scott Wagner is also in the audience if there's questions. Just want to give the commission a quick brief.
I think that's helpful. Thank you so much. Lindsay, good morning.
Good morning, Commissioners. Lindsay Poruso, your CFO. Yes, so unfortunately, we have experienced some pretty significant payment card processing challenges since we transitioned, well, I shouldn't say we transitioned, since our vendor transitioned to a new, basically they moved to going to the cloud. So they migrated to a system, and it sounds like perhaps they weren't quite prepared for what that looked like in production. So that happened on Friday, about a week and a half ago. Scott Wagner is here, our CIO. If you have any technical questions about those things, I will certainly need to defer to him. But what matters to our citizens is that that change then resulted in reduced access, limited access to being able to process cards. So for about a week, we were completely able to process any credit card payments at any of our locations. Then for a short time, we were able to take credit card payments, but the challenge was that at that time, the reporting function, which basically says I go to the tag office, I pay my tag fee, and then our system gets from their system the information that says this should go to the tag office. Or this money should, if it's a tax payment, this money should go to the property tax funds. That reporting structure was down. And so within finance, we had created a tracking sheet that we had asked our departments to use so that they could at least track some of that information. It slowed down processes, but at least it was a way to do it. Well, unfortunately, again, earlier this week, there were, again, other issues that came up related to the transition and migration, and so we again had to turn off access to those cards just because even though sometimes we could process them, we couldn't always process them. We didn't know where they were going or if they were being successful. So unfortunately, the way this arrangement works is we have an exclusivity agreement with that company to provide those services for us. We literally did not have, until about last week, agreement from them to be able to have a backup plan. We now do have that agreement from them that we can have, at least while their services are down, an emergency backup. So we are working very hard to get that stood up as soon as possible. It will still take some time to get all of that set up, and then obviously to get all the programming on the back end for that done. So we still need to ask for patience. We don't know when this will be completely resolved. We hear that there's hope, and then unfortunately something else happens. So just wanted to make sure you know we are literally doing everything possible in our power. Your IT team, your finance team, your departments are trying very hard. We know this is a huge inconvenience to citizens, and we greatly regret it. Unfortunately, there's just very little we can do within our power right now. So
Well, that is a very helpful update. So they can take cash, they can take checks.
yes.
Let me ask the question. Does the same, if they're paying something online, do we use the same merchant provider for online? And is that also down if they pay credit card via online also?
We do use the same provider. I will defer to Scott. My understanding is that's also down.
Okay.
But I will.
That's not my understanding.
Okay. Well, we're going to let Scott come to the podium and correct me.
Okay.
On the record.
Sure.
Scott Wagner, good morning. Your CIO, Chief Information Officer. So from a web perspective, my understanding is probably about 4 days after the incident, web was restored. And as far as I know, we continue to take that payment. Some of the challenges that we're talking about involve networking things that aren't quite as applicable in that space as they are for the in-person.
Okay.
So I would just like to say, Lindsay, just echo I appreciate everyone's patience. We're working through this as quickly as we can. Historically, just to not defend this group that much, but we've had 7+ years of bliss, if you will, looking back, of stable performance. We hit a snag here for the last 2 weeks, which is unacceptable. But they did more of an ambitious move than they probably should have.
Understood. Well, that's helpful if the public understand. So we appreciate all the work that's going into this. We'll just keep communicating to the public so they're aware of what's going on.
Yeah. That was my next statement, is as I had people reach out to me, what means of communication are we doing to make sure that folks know about this so that they don't get somewhere and they can't make the payment? Because
Nicole will address this.
Good morning, Commission. Nicole Gibbs of Strategic Communications. We are, excuse me, we are posting an update daily online on social media. So at this time, the plan is that if those departments are able to take alternative payments, we recommend that you bring those. So not only on our social media we're doing that, but we have signs posted at each of our locations what their options are, whether they are able to take those alternative payment options. Yes, sir, of course.
Okay, very good. Thank you. That's an important update. I appreciate you carving out some time to provide that to the commission and the public. So good. Okay. Commissioner Howe.
Yeah, I think right now everybody's pretty busy, so I don't want to ask for this for today. But I think after this is all resolved and the dust is settled and we've kind of moved past this, it might be a good idea for us to reflect on what happened, what were our deficiencies, what are our strengths, what are our weaknesses, and let's learn from this because, it sounds like there was maybe a lack of a beta test or something that put us into an awkward position. We couldn't revert to what was working. We were already, we did something that put us into a position we couldn't go backwards. I don't know what happened exactly. I'm not sure if it was how much if it was county versus vendor. There's a lot about this.
Zero was us. I want to be crystal clear. There was absolutely nothing that the county could have done any differently in this scenario to have prevented this. This is solely with the vendor. I do agree that we need to do an after action.
That's what I'm saying.
And we're tracking all of that, but I want to be crystal clear with the community that this was not something that the county was responsible for in any way, shape, or form.
See, that's good comments because I didn't have it that crystal clear in my head until you said it that way. So it's good to note that. But I do think, and for our vendors that are going to make a change in how they do something, we ought to require them to demonstrate a beta test or a way to say if this doesn't work, they can go backwards and revert to what does work. I mean, there's got to be a way to avoid, if you will, a 2-week shutdown of us taking payments. And this is such a huge challenge going forward. This is going to last a long time to get this resolved. And I guess my point is the pain is really great. And I don't know what we could have done, but I want to reflect on that idea. What could we have done differently to avoid this type of pain in the future? Thank you.
Very good. Okay. Thank you, Lindsay. Thank you, Scott, Nicole. Appreciate it. Commissioner Meitzer?
Yeah, if we're wrapping this up or whatever, I just want to thank Rusty for the history of what happened from January. Shows the recent stuff. Steve and Lori and Mario, thank you for the input. Personally, I don't like to engage in helping micromanage departments, but it's comforting to know that you could come to us when you need it to help support you and lean on. And you had to educate us really quickly on stuff. I know more about community corrections now than I have in the 6 years of service. So, but I just, my sincere thanks to you guys and for all of this and the staff and for helping all this and Tom, the leadership with the management. So thank you very much.
Very good. Very appropriate. Yeah. Okay. Anything else need to come before the commission? Again, thank you so much for the capacity to have this special meeting. We're officially adjourned.